Before we begin, I want you to notice something. Not the words, not the ideas, the sound of this moment. Because even silence has a temperature, even stillness has a posture, and before a single argument enters the room has already decided whether it will listen. That's the first lie we're taught to swallow, that communication is about content. It isn't. It's about permission, and permission is granted or denied by tone. The myth of neutral speech. We're raised on a fantasy. The fantasy says, if you're right, people will hear you. If you explain clearly, they'll understand. If the facts are solid, the truth will rise. That fantasy has body counts. Because the world does not run on correctness, it runs on signal dominance. Your voice enters a space already carrying metadata: who should speak, who should wait, who is allowed certainty, who must apologize first. This is decided before your sentence finishes loading. And if you've ever watched someone say something clumsy, wrong, even offensive, yet be applauded for their confidence, while someone else says something careful, true, necessary, and gets dismissed as emotional or unclear, congratulations, you've witnessed narrative physics. The same sentence, different futures. Let's do an experiment. Say this like you're hoping nobody notices you. I just think maybe we should reconsider this. Now say it like you're already standing on the other side of the decision. This needs to be reconsidered. Nothing changed except tone, but one sounds like it belongs in a meeting minutes document. The other sounds like it belongs in history. The human brain doesn't evaluate speech like a spreadsheet. It evaluates it like weather. Is this voice stable? Is it dangerous? Is it familiar? Is it authoritative? People don't ask, is this true? They ask, is this safe to agree with? And your voice answers for you. Why power always has a sound. Power never arrives quietly by accident. It arrives trained. Think about political speeches that shifted errors, not because they were eloquent, but because they were inevitable. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't rush. That pacing wasn't style, it was command. Margaret Thatcher didn't just govern policy, she governed pitch. She lowered her voice deliberately because authority in that culture lived lower in the register. Greta Thunberg didn't introduce new data, she introduced moral compression. Short sentences, hard stops, no padding, no charm offensive. The establishment didn't panic because she was wrong. They panicked because she sounded unafraid of them. Every system recognizes its threat by ear first. Tone policing is narrative border control. Let's name it properly. When people say calm down, you'd be more convincing if you sounded nicer. Why are you so intense? You're not wrong, but your delivery, they are not offering feedback. They are defending a border. Tone policing is how power protects itself without ever debating substance. It shifts the conversation from what is being said to how it made me feel, which conveniently recents the listener as the authority. And notice who gets policed. Not the loudest. Not the most arrogant, but the ones whose voices disrupt the expected hierarchy, because a voice that refuses to kneel rewrites the script. Why you were trained to soften. From early on, many people are taught to raise pitch at the end of sentences, add laughter to diffuse tension, over-explain, apologize preemptively, ask questions instead of making statements. This is not about kindness, it's about containment. A soft voice is easier to interrupt. A hesitant cadence invites correction. An apologetic tone reassures the room that nothing fundamental is about to change. You were not trained to communicate. You were trained to self-edit power. And the tragedy is that most people internalize this as personality, not conditioning. I'm just bad at speaking. I'm not confident. I ramble. No. You were taught to make your ideas smaller than the room. The psychology they don't teach you. Here's the part no one likes admitting. People decide whether to respect you before they decide whether you're right. That decision happens fast. Subconscious, biological. Your voice triggers ancient pattern recognition, dominance, submission, reliability, threat, leadership. Once that decision is made, logic becomes decoration. That's why confident nonsense spreads faster than careful truth. That's why loud certainty beats quiet accuracy. That's why charisma outruns peer review. This isn't because humans are stupid. It's because we evolved to survive social environments, not academic seminars. Your voice is treated like a survival signal. Why narratives don't change with facts. This is where most activists, thinkers, and educators burn out. They keep adding information, graphs, sources, context. clarifications, and nothing moves. Because narratives don't shift when people learn something new. They shift when the emotional atmosphere changes. When fear is named, when silence is broken, when someone speaks with the calm of a person who is not asking, facts are necessary, but tone is catalytic. History turns when someone changes how a room feels. The most dangerous voice is the calm one. Let's kill a myth. Power is not loud. Loud is often desperation in costume. Real power sounds slow, grounded, unhurried, slightly bored with nonsense. Think about the voice that makes a room quiet. Not because it demanded attention, but because it didn't chase it. Silence after a sentence is not emptiness. It's pressure. Most people rush to fill it. The powerful let it work. The voice you're afraid to use. You already know which voice you avoid. The one that drops at the end of sentences, doesn't laugh to soften impact, doesn't explain itself twice, doesn't apologize for clarity. That voice feels dangerous because it doesn't negotiate its existence. It assumes space. And you were taught that assuming space is arrogance unless you're authorized. But here's the truth. Every dominant narrative began as an unauthorized voice. Every shift started with someone who sounded like they weren't waiting their turn. This is not about being rude. Let's be precise. This is not an argument for cruelty, or shouting, or steamrolling. This is about anchoring. An anchored voice doesn't attack. It doesn't beg. It doesn't audition. It states, and states again. And lets discomfort reveal where the resistance lives. Why your voice scares people. Sometimes people react badly not because you're wrong, but because your voice disrupts their internal order. A steady voice in chaos feels threatening. A calm voice in injustice feels accusatory. A certain voice in uncertainty exposes how much everyone else is bluffing. So they say, you think you know everything, you're too intense, you're hard to talk to. What they mean is, you are not playing the role I expected you to play. That's not your problem. That's the narrative cracking. The cost of never changing your tone. Here's the quiet tragedy. If you never change your voice, you can be right your entire life and irrelevant. You can be ethical, informed, principled, and invisible. Because systems don't reward truth, they reward delivery that stabilizes them. If your goal is to be liked, keep your tone small. If your goal is to be heard, your voice must risk friction. How to speak like the future is backing you. This is the shift. Stop speaking like you're making a proposal. Speak like you're reporting a fact from a place the room hasn't reached yet. Not, I think this might be a problem, but this is the problem. Not, we should consider, but what's happening is language anchored in observation, not permission. You're not asking the room to agree. You're informing it of reality. Your voice is a political act. Every time you speak, you're choosing to reinforce a hierarchy or to disturb it. Even neutrality has a tone, and neutrality almost always sides with whatever already exists. So ask yourself, who does my voice serve? What does my tone protect? What future does it quietly endorse? Because the narrative is listening, even when people pretend not to be. Say it like it's already true. Here's the final truth. The narrative doesn't belong to whoever has the best argument. It belongs to whoever sounds like the story has already turned. History doesn't move when someone begs eloquently. It moves when someone speaks as if the ending is no longer negotiable. So don't shrink your voice to fit the room. Change the temperature of the room with it. Speak like the future is standing behind you. Because the moment your voice changes, the narrative follows.